Welcome back to the Primary Election Candidates Forum. We will now be interviewing State Representative District 31 candidates. The candidates with us this evening include Scott Clem, Brenda Schladweiler, and Billy Montgomery. Scott Clem and Brenda Schladweiler are running on the Republican ticket, therefore only one of them will advance to the general election, while Billy Montgomery is the only one running on the Democratic ticket and will automatically advance to the general election. We will start with an introductory statement from each of our candidates. Candidates, you will have 1 minute. We will begin with Scott Clem.
Good evening. My name is Scott Clem. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum here tonight. A little about myself. I've lived in Campbell County for practically my entire life. A little over 10 years ago, when I was 19 years old, I was paralyzed in a skiing accident. Now, through a lot of physical therapy and God's blessings, I'm able to use an arm crutch, which I have right here. Someone asked me a second ago, do you use this thing? And I said, well, you have to speak softly and carry a big stick, so that's what I do. I've been blessed, absolutely blessed to have an amazing family. My mom, my dad, my sisters. I have a sister here, only she's here under threat of running over her toes with my wheelchair. I've been blessed with 3 beautiful children and a wonderful wife. If she was here, she'd probably start crying. Because she's very emotional. She has a baby in her belly that's due here soon. I'm running on the issues. As far as career and qualifications, I work at the Yes House. I've been there for 8 years. Over the last year, I was the Parks and Beautification Board chairman. Now I'm the vice chairman this year, a deacon at our church, and I also preach in our junior church. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Brenda Schladweiler.
Hi, my name is Brenda Schladweiler, and I'm running for representative from House District 31. I first came to Gillette in 1977 and have been a business owner here since probably 30 years ago. About 10 years ago, I received a master's and a doctorate degree from the University of Wyoming in soil science. The sacrifices I made advancing my education as an older student gave me an incredible appreciation for our way of life in this county and this state. Having worked throughout Wyoming as an energy contractor for over 3 decades, I am very familiar with the challenges faced by the mining and oil and gas industries. As a 3-time elected board supervisor to the Campbell County Conservation District, I understand both local and state issues related to agriculture. I believe this experience and knowledge will allow me to be a legislator with pragmatic and feasible solutions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We will now move on to Billy Montgomery.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Billy Montgomery, candidate for House District 31. I'd like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters, Gillette Public Access TV, City of Gillette Basin Radio Network for this time. I've been a resident of Gillette for 36 years, and I have served in the United States Army for 3 years. I'm a Vietnam combat veteran, and as a retiree of BNSF Railroad for 34 years. I'm quite familiar with the business community, and I feel I can relate to the working men and women of Campbell County and Wyoming. I currently serve on the City of Gillette Planning Commission. I have previously worked on the City-County Comprehensive Plan and the City of Gillette Landscaping Ordinance. I volunteer with the Campbell County Prevention Council and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Furry Kid Foundation, American Red Cross, to name a few. Also a member of the Garth Board of Directors. I have the endorsements of the Campbell County Board of Realtors and the Wyoming Education Association.
Thank you. Now for the first question, which goes to all candidates. Each candidate has 1 minute to respond. If elected, what do you hope to accomplish? And we'll start with Brenda Schladweiler.
Thank you. I originally entered this race based on my concern for energy sector jobs as an energy contractor around the state. I'm very familiar with the industries that comprise the energy sector, and I've had 30 years of working with elected officials and federal and state agencies on those statewide issues. I have no illusions that my first year will be a cakewalk. I'm sure there will be a steep learning curve on processes and protocol. I'm not going to Cheyenne with any one bill that I'm going to introduce immediately. I will work on building trust with my fellow legislators as well as my constituents back home. I'm open to serving on any committees where I'm needed, and I will direct all my energies and resources to issues relevant to Wyoming that have feasible solutions in the near term. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to Billy Montgomery.
Thank you. One of my as in my previous campaigns, I've talked about the need for research on coal, and I still feel this is something the state should lead the way in and use the university more to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to Scott Clem.
Sure. I'm a lighthearted fellow, but I'm not lighthearted about the issues. And I come to the table really with three primary issues. The first is getting back our public lands. Wyoming is 48% controlled by the federal government. An additional 19% of minerals are controlled by the federal government as well. They claim they own them, which is unconstitutional. It's not what our founding fathers envisioned, as some of the other candidates had mentioned a moment ago. I want to fight for local control of education. I believe in stopping Common Core, and I also believe that the superintendent of public construction should remain in an elected position and not an appointed position to the governor. I am also fighting for a balanced approach to state funding. Transparency must reign when it comes to state funding. I'm going to go back a little to the public lands issue just for a moment and say this. The mineral royalty funds, or mineral royalties that Campbell County produces, all of that goes to the federal government, and we get the kickbacks. During the sequester, public lands were restricted by the federal government. You couldn't go into Yellowstone, and you couldn't go to some parks and lakes to go fishing or to go get timber. That's ridiculous. Wyoming must control its lands.
Thank you. Our next question will be for Billy Montgomery. You have 1 minute to respond. You list health care as your top priority. Would you please elaborate on this?
Thank you. We have a need in Wyoming for health care and mental health care in our communities. And I just believe that we have put 17,600 of the state's low-income childless adults into a health care limbo. And I feel that Wyoming, why I decided to make this my retirement home, was because we was a caring state, and Gillette especially is caring for our needy. And I feel like we should do better for our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now give the other candidates 30 seconds for rebuttal. We will start with Scott Clem.
Could you repeat that question for me?
This was based on his results from his survey. He said, you list health care as your top priority. Would you please elaborate on this?
I see. Healthcare is certainly an issue today because we have Obamacare, and Obamacare is a train wreck. First of all, I would not expand Medicaid funding. Second of all, though, I do believe we need to take care of those who are disabled among us. I hear some horror stories about how the state or people within the state of Wyoming are having such a hard time. Parents with kids who are disabled who can't get the funding they need to take care of their children. That has to stop.
Thank you. We'll move on to Brenda Schladweiler. You have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
As a business owner, I have seen firsthand the problems associated with Obamacare. I know I've had to, even in the last 6 months, adjust things that I do as a business person based on that. When it comes to Medicaid expansion, though, I would be willing to discuss the general impact from an economic standpoint on the state of Wyoming and further evaluate that.
Thank you. Our next question will be for Scott Clem. You have 1 minute to respond. When you talk about the rainy day fund in the questionnaire, you say, I do not believe we should continue to build our fund if we can't fund ordinary expected expenses. What ordinary expected expenses do you feel aren't being funded?
Sure, we've had a lot of talk here recently about construction, school construction, and also funding our local schools. Government is tasked with providing for certain essential functions. Government, prisons, medical assistant, things of that nature. And I do believe that we need to take care of those things. We have a big rainy day fund. Some want it to be a full biennium, which is fine. But my argument is we need to take care of the things that are on the table first before we contribute to that rainy day fund. I'm a big Dave Ramsey guy. He says that individuals, families, should have a full 4 to 6 months of a full emergency fund, which would kind of be like a rainy day fund. Of course, we have a volatile income, which is oil and natural gas and coal, so I believe that an additional few months, at least, at minimum 9 months, should be the bare minimum. But I'm not opposed to using that rainy day fund, especially when we hit hard economic times, to go ahead and fund those things. But I'm also not opposed, or I'll just stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now give the other candidates 30 seconds for rebuttal. We'll start with Brenda Schladweiler.
Thank you. As a business owner, I know the need of a contingency fund. I've seen in my 30 years of being in business, I've seen at least 2 downturn cycles. And so I understand that contingency fund need. It's just the size that is up for debate. And I would not be in the court of saying that we need to double what we have. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Billy Montgomery.
Thank you. Having a rainy day fund is critical. The Joint Appropriations Committee is planning interim studies to look at the various savings accounts this summer. I question the large amounts of liquid savings accounts that we have. Instead of only investing in low returns like bonds and certain securities, I would like to look at higher rates of returns offered by stocks and equities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be for Brenda Schladweiler. You have 1 minute to respond. In your questionnaire, you say you would like to ensure multiple use of federal lands. How do you plan to do this?
Thank you for that question. With the discussion on federal lands, some of this gets lost in the fact that since 1976, the federal agencies have mandated multiple use. That includes oil and gas development and energy development, as well as grazing from agriculture. I think there's a lot of outside interests right now that are focused on multiple use, and I would fight on the state level to minimize their impact in Wyoming. At the same time, I would encourage all county, local officials, as well as state agencies to be at the table with those federal agencies, because if you're not at the table, we've heard it many times said that you're on the menu, and it has been my experience that if you can work with the local agency folks, even though they talk or basically their bosses are in Washington and they're bureaucrats, it's better to be at that table with those folks. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now give the other candidates 30 seconds for rebuttal. We'll begin with Billy Montgomery.
I'm concerned about the lands like this. I'm concerned of the hunting and fishing, and I feel like Wyoming it's one of the big draws why people love Wyoming. It's the outdoors, and I feel like if we give a lot of that away, we'll lose that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Scott Clem.
I think we need to kick those people out of the boardroom. Wyoming should have its own lands. Again, 48% of Wyoming lands are owned by the federal government. That's land that we can't tax for education. It's land that we can't use to build our local economies, and it's land where we don't control the natural resources and minerals. Another ugly fact is Wyoming is, as far as our budget is concerned, 41% of it comes from the federal government. Why? Because of PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. Because we can't tax that land, they're giving us pennies on the dollars of what we could get for taxes. We need that land. There's no negotiating about this. We need that land.
Thank you. We will now move on to closing remarks. Candidates, you have up to 1 minute for closing remarks or to address any topics that were not covered in the questioning period. We will begin with Billy Montgomery.
Thank you. My experience in the Army and other organizations has given me the knowledge on how to work with others and how to come up with solutions to ensure the best for Campbell County residents and our state of Wyoming. I would be committed to listening to and represent every aspect of my district and the state of Wyoming. As in my past campaigns, I still feel we need to promote research on coal, invest more into energy like the Energy Mega Campus. We need to create a diverse economy for this state, and we also need to invest in the most valuable asset or resource that we have in Wyoming, our children. Again, I'd like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters, Gillette Public Access, City of Gillette Basin Radio, and to you here that are here tonight, and to the ones watching this at home. Please join me on Facebook at Billy Montgomery at House District 31 or my webpage, electbillymontgomery.ruck.us. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Clem.
In government, we see an ugly trend where those in government don't take accountability, and where many among us pass our responsibilities on to someone else. Who will take responsibility to provide for my family and raise and educate my children? I will. Who will get serious about our broken education system, a system that is socialistic and in need of Wyoming local control instead of federal control? I will. Who will raise their voice against a land baron who is the federal government, who owns 48% of Wyoming public lands and claims additional ownership of 19% of our underground minerals? I will. At 19 years old, I determined not to be defined, controlled, or beaten by paralysis. I did not give up. By God's grace, I persevered. Now at 30 years old, I'm determined that Wyoming will not be defined, controlled, or beaten by the federal government. By God's grace, I will persevere in defending our U.S. and Wyoming Constitution. I will not give up in seeking that Wyoming is empowered and that local control of our rights, our freedoms, our property, and our prosperity is in the hands of the people and not government bureaucrats. Thank you, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you. And finally, Brenda Schladweiler.
Okay, thank you. At work or in my personal life, I have always given back, whether that be time, knowledge, or resources. My faith tells me that's the right thing to do. Much of my historical public service, however, has been behind the scenes. As I stepped into the public light of running for Wyoming House District 31, it has been an adjustment for me to know that people are scrutinizing my every word. But that's okay. It's not about me, but the voters in my district. In that light, I may alienate some of those voters by the following statement, though. I am in total agreement on the revenue side of getting our federal lands back, but I am a skeptic when it comes to the expense side. I have not seen a viable cost-benefit ratio to the people of Wyoming, and I would be concerned that we could get into a long, drawn-out court battle that would cost us millions in times. I feel we have too many issues ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the State Representative District 31 part of our primary election candidates forum. Tonight's candidate forum will air several times before the primary election on August 19th. For a complete listing of the GPA TV schedule, visit their website at gillettewy.gov/GPA. We will take a short break while the candidates for State Representative District 52 take their positions. We'll be back in 5 minutes.